technology is going to keep on keeping on until there's some laws in place to stop them. So,
Correct.
what do you recommend for people to reduce their exposure to EMFs and some solutions that we can utilize to help to, reduce the negative effects of them?
Yeah. So until safety standards are sort of up to speed with how I suppose technology is manufactured and used, and then of course the infrastructure that is dependent on a lot of these wireless devices. A lot of the time, yes, technology is very good, and it's super important in terms of the advancement of civilization, and obviously, making and creating. Obviously there's implications, so society implications as well. But at the end of the day, it's all about convenience, as you were touching on. But until then, until we have a new safety standards, until there is irrefutable bulletproof evidence that electromagnetic fields, radio waves, or microwave radiation is cancerous, is toxic. You have to think about how to reduce your risks or exposure. And it's kind of hard. I'll be honest with you. It's very hard because a lot of people are really dependent on these technologies or interactions, both physically and mentally, even because there's a lot of dependency there as well. But what you really have to factor is what I use as an acronym, and this is really just standard sort of safety procedure, if you want to call it that. A really good safety practice tip is what I call DLS, which is distance and limit and shut down. So the idea is to really distance yourself from a lot of the wireless specific frequencies. So for example, in your home, if you have a Wi-Fi router, I would suggest not put it in your bedroom. EMFs have been linked to show an increase in really brain activity, which has obviously a decrease in specific melatonin, which has an adverse effect for you when you're in the bedroom. And of course, you want to sleep, and it's the quality of sleep, not the amount of hours of sleep that you get, which a lot of people forget. Getting back to my point about distancing yourself from these frequencies, is that having that in your bedroom, near your bed or by your bed, and I've seen this because it's insanity to me in some people's homes, that is right by their bed. You do not want to have a Wi-Fi router anywhere near you. Distance is your friend at all times. So you distance yourself from your Wi-Fi routers. You distance yourself from a lot of the Bluetooth gadgets, whether they're Wi-Fi boosters, extenders, for example. I'm just using the household sort of as painting the picture, demonstrate what I mean by distance. Your cell phone, for example, a lot of people aren't aware, but your cell phone has a warning label, or I should say a disclaimer. It tells you body separation, right? Keep this phone away from you. And usually it's anywhere between 5 to 8 millimeter separation. In other words, don't touch it. Manufacturer tells you they're right there. So distance yourself. Don't handle the devices you frequently use every day. Try and put them in an area where you're not physically touching them. So for example, mine's on my table right now. My laptop, I'm not touching it. I'm in front of it, but I'm not touching it. My tablets and everything else that I use, whether it's on my lap or my laptop's on my lap, I definitely, if I am going to use it, for example, on the couch, because I'm guilty, just like everybody else, I'll put like a pillow in between. I don't want this sort of radiating, on my boys, so to speak, because as I already mentioned, I am a parent of two, and so far things are good, but I would have to say a lot of it has been, because I've been distancing myself, and of course, we'll get to it, but using my technology as well. So distance here is your friend. Limit is usually tied to really just, I would say, keeping or capping yourself from overusing devices that you really have no need for. So for example, a lot of people I see walking around, and this is insanity to me too, like insanity, but we're talking earbuds, right? It's in their ear all day, like legitimately all day. I mean, like
me and my buddy call them brain grenades.
Yeah, like honestly, dude, like this is insanity. Like I see people walking, and like, don't get me wrong, I got good buddies who, who've been with me as far as like my journey too, and they know how, how much of an advocate I am for safe use of technology and EMF exposure, and they still put it in their ear and they rock around. And like, not to say that they're on the phone all the time, right? I mean, these are guys that are just sort of, they have businesses, they run businesses, and they rely a lot on, cell phone or communication, right? But I mean, when you're done with it, when you're off the call, take it out of your ear, right? It's very simple. Remember, I just told you about the NTP, the National Toxicology Program, right? They found an increase in male, specifically mice, with 30 minutes of exposure over the course of 2 years of glioma, specifically, again, here in the temporal lobe, right? I mean, the correlation is there. It's almost, I would say, irrefutable that it can be related to cell phone use, or in this case, your AirPods or Bluetooth headsets. Again, limit here, the L is to really limit the amount of exposure you have when you are physically in contact with your devices. So this, and that was just a prime example of just the EarPod itself, or the AirPod. But it's also when you're physically handling, like I'm guilty, I'm in my phone and I'm texting steady, or I'm answering an email, or maybe I'm just, creeping Instagram. I don't know. But, half an hour can lead to like an hour.
Right.
And even kids, like even with my kids, and I can tell you, like my daughter, she's quite, I'm not gonna say young, but she's getting older to a point where, she's now, she's 5 years old. She knows how to use a tablet, in this case, an iPad. And she is, she can be glued to that thing if unchecked for hours, like hours. So again, my recommendation, safety practice, a tip. We already covered distance. That's the D. L is limit. So limit the amount of exposure or usage of these devices. Obviously, that helps when it comes to protecting your body from these negative effects. And then the third is really shut down, right? Or turn off. And when you turn off your devices, really it gives you a nice break period to just sort of get in tune with yourself, which is always a good thing, because you often find that, you're going, a mile a minute, and it's hard to sort of just ground yourself a little. So definitely by turning off your devices, A, you're more present. And then B, you also are now putting yourself in a position where your body can now just relax and you can get into that state, specifically at the end of the day, where you now need to recoup, re-energize, and of course, have a great night's sleep. So DLS, distance, limit, shut down.
Love it, man. I love how you laid that out, and that makes it easy to remember too. And because, a lot of times when I'm suggesting things to people, it's like you said, keep your phone off you as much as you can, especially guys, get it out of your pockets, because, our pockets are deep and right by, like you said, our little boys. So keep it out of the pockets. I think that's the biggest thing. My phone's over here. I tell people, unplug your freaking Wi-Fi when you're not using it, especially at night. Like, make that part of your evening routine. That's one of my number one things when working with clients. Like, when you go to bed, make part of your evening routine to unplug your Wi-Fi, and then don't plug it back in until you need to use it. Because a lot of times, like especially with our phones now, if you're going to check something quick, most of us have some sort of data. If you're checking something real quick, you don't need to plug in the Wi-Fi and have that blasting. Like, check it real quick, put it away. And then, like you said, shutting things down. And I'm a big fan of unplugging things when I'm not using, because one, it creates that barrier to using them quite a bit harder, because I got to plug it back in, I got to turn it back on. But it's also, our circuits are adding a little bit of those frequencies out there too. So I tell people, if you can shut down your whole circuit board to part of your house at night, that's a good move too. So it's a lot of little things, but like we're saying, this is stimulating that fight or flight response, that sympathetic nervous system.
Correct.
And most of us are chronically in that already.